Since Qi Ying is part of the pro-foreign faction, in allowing foreign merchants into the city, they naturally gave in to the foreigners' demands, to avoid trouble. In July 1843, Qi Ying announced that Guangzhou would be opened to foreigners. But with the memory of Sanyang Li, the people of Guangdong were still living in fear and anger. So Qi Ying's decision was immediately met with massive resistance. People posted notices swearing to resist with petitions and protest rallies everywhere. It looked like things were spiraling out of control. Qi had no choice but to withdraw the previous order and inform the British envoy at the time, Pottinger. Now, with public anger boiling over, Guangzhou was entered, and Pottinger accepted this situation. For the next 3 years, both sides coexisted peacefully. But after 3 years, Sir John Davis replaced Pottinger as the British envoy, brought up the old issue again, and demanded the treaty be fulfilled. Enter Guangzhou City. In early 1846, Qi Ying issued another official announcement, declaring that the British would enter Guangzhou. Needless to say, we all know how the people of Guangzhou would react this time. The people's resentment was even fiercer than before. Notices explicitly said foreigners entering the city would be killed on sight, and villages around Guangzhou were mobilized. At first, Qi Ying hoped to use the gentry's influence to calm the farmers, but this time, the gentry defied the government, joined the anti-foreign movement, and when Qi Ying sent the Guangzhou prefect for secret talks with the British, the news leaked out. Enraged mobs stormed the yamen and the prefect's residence, burning his official robes. This protest eventually escalated into a citywide riot. Finally, the Guangzhou prefect was forced to resign. Qi Ying apologized, and an agreement was made with the British to postpone entry by 3 more years, to after April 1849. During that time, friction between Chinese and British occurred sporadically in Guangzhou and nearby villages. But each time, both sides compromised and avoided escalation, a state that lasted until the Huamzhugi incident broke out. Huamzhugi is a small village near Guangzhou. In December 1847, 6 British people stayed there and were killed by the villagers. Envoy Davis was utterly shocked. He demanded Qi Ying punish this severely or else he'd start a war. Seeking justice, Qi Ying compromised. He arrested 15 villagers, executing 4. This drastic measure triggered fierce backlash across Guangdong. Local unrest emerged, causing imperial court concern. Qi Ying was dismissed by Emperor Do Guang, replaced by Xu Guangjin as Governor General of Liangguang. Learning from Qi Ying's lesson, Xu realized any compromise with the British would provoke public fury, lose popular support, and invite accusations of treason. The appeasement policy wouldn't work here. He must stand with the angry masses and take leadership of the anti-foreign movement. This approach could quell internal unrest while using public sentiment as leverage against the British, who always demanded more. But how to achieve this? Xu Guangjin chose the militia format. The Sun Yuanli incident sparked widespread militias in Guangdong, but since they were controlled by gentry rather than the government, they became major destabilizing factors. Thus, after the Opium War, the government revoked militias' legal status. Chu's tough stance toward the British revived the militias, gaining enthusiastic gentry support as disbanded units rebuilt. Compared to before, militia coverage expanded beyond rural areas. Now, urban merchants generously funded militias too. Under Xu's support, the militia movement flourished. Many hands make light work. He reported to Beijing that 100,000 had joined militias. Xu's strategy worked. In 1849, Britain demanded city entry prior agreement, but with Beijing's backing, Xu refused, citing public opposition. Facing Guangzhou's active paramilitary forces, the British questioned whether entering such a hostile city was worthwhile, leading to another compromise. However, no new entry date was set this time. Afterwards, due to policy shifts in Britain, a relatively moderate approach toward Guangzhou was adopted. So, the city entry issue was shelved just like that. Guangzhou's anti-entry movement achieved a temporary compromise. In this incident, Xu Guangjin, unlike Qiying, consistently adopted a tough stance in dialogues with Britain. Britain eventually made concessions, which was highly praised by the imperial court and greatly boosted the morale of Guangzhou citizens. Gee. However, both China and Britain closed the door on the entry issue. Guangzhou ignored foreigners' complaints, and the later enthroned Emperor Xianfeng adopted an extremely cold attitude toward foreigners. This planted the seeds for Britain and France to later reignite war under pretexts. All right, that concludes the interpretation of the first part. To briefly summarize, the Sun Yun-Li incident had three major impacts on the Guangdong region. First, the large-scale rise of militias. Second, the formation of anti-foreignism. Third, the emergence of anti-government consciousness. These three influences fermented over time and played a huge role in the movement against British entry into Guangzhou from 1842 to 1849. From Lin Zexu arriving in Guangzhou in 1839 to oversee the opium ban, to 1849, when the people of Guangzhou achieved victory against entry. Um, oh, During this roughly 10-year period, the Guangdong region faced impacts from Western colonial powers. On the surface, every move in Guangzhou seemed targeted at foreigners, but it's far more complicated than that. The responses to foreigners continued to ferment and evolve, shaking the traditional social and political structures of South China, breeding various unstable factors. These unstable factors exploded between 1850 and 1856, escalating into rebellions across all of South China. So, what exactly changed in South China society? How will these changes affect Qing dynasty politics? And how will foreign powers further encroach on the Guangzhou area? We'll answer these in the next episode. All right, that's the introduction to the first half of Strangers at the Gate. Keynotes are below the audio. See you in the next episode.